Hello there. It's that time again. It's time to dream, yet the mind drifts on. Enter the nocturnal paradox. At this hour, you are lying there, not fully awake, not yet gone. Just in between. That threshold quiet, the kind that only arrives when the world has gone calm, and your thoughts begin to drift, not pushed, just moving on their own. The room around you is familiar, not only by look, but in the deeper way your body knows a place, without needing to think about it. The ceiling above you, a flat, even plane you have looked at many times, barely visible in low light, yet right where it has always been. Nothing about it has changed. The air rests lightly on your body, cool or warm, hard to tell at first, until you hold enough to feel it. The blanket lies across you, not heavy, not light, just enough to remind you that you are here. Your arms rest where they fell, your legs motionless, your breathing, even unhurried, automatic, moving in and out without effort. Everything is ordinary, everything as it was, and yet, at this hour, a gentle turn begins. Not in the room, nothing moves, nothing breaks the quiet, but within, a change in attention, a drift inward toward that harder-to-name place. It does not arrive all at once, no clear moment, no edge, just a thought, barely formed, beginning to rise. It does not demand anything. It does not announce itself. It appears, and then it remains. What is all of this? Not the kind of thought that moves through you during the day, quick, light, easy to forget. This one is different, deeper, it has weight, the kind that holds even when you turn away from it. You look at the ceiling. You have been here many times, but now there is a faint difference. Not because anything has changed, but because you are aware that you are looking. That awareness is quiet, almost delicate, easy to miss if you were not already here, already at rest, already paying attention. But once you notice it, it does not go. You are here, in this room, on this bed, in this moment. That feels certain, grounded, real. There is no clear reason to doubt it. Everything behaves as expected. A faint hum beyond the room, low, even easy to ignore until you let yourself hear it. Your breath continues, in and out. Each inhale arriving without effort, each exhale leaving the same way. All of it consistent, reliable, but feeling real and being real are not always the same. That is where it deepens, not abruptly, not with force, like a ripple moving outward, across water that was already calm, quiet at first, then harder to ignore. What if this is not exactly what it appears to be? Not a trick, not a hollow copy, but built, formed, held together by rules you did not make and have never needed to locate, because they have always just worked. You do not need to answer it. Not now, not tonight. Let it remain near you, like a presence at the edge of the room, not asking for anything, not going anywhere. Because here is the thing about this thought. It isn't new. You have been here before. Not this room, not this night, but this place inside yourself, where the question returns, without invitation, without warning, without needing a reason. It has always returned, and that is worth holding for a moment, because most thoughts do not do that. Most thoughts arrive and fade and leave no mark. They belong to the hour that made them, but this one is different. It belongs to no particular hour. It belongs to the quiet, to the threshold, to the part of you that only becomes audible when everything else has gone. You did not decide to have it. You did not arrive at it through reason. You did not build toward it the way you build toward ordinary conclusions. It was already there, waiting at the edge of your attention, the way the hum beyond the room was already there, before you thought to listen for it. And the question it carries is not new either. It is old, older than tonight, older than the last time it found you. It has lived through a lot of your life, through the moves, through the gaps, through the years when you were too occupied to let it reach you. It waited through all of that. The kind of question that does not gather answers, but gathers weight. The more you have lived, the more it means. Not because it changed, because you did. Running underneath all of it, beneath the full days, beneath everything you move through without pausing to ask what it is. And something in you has always known it. Not clearly, not in a way you could hold up and examine, but in the way you know this ceiling without needing light, in the way you know the weight of this blanket before you feel it. A knowing that does not announce itself, that does not need to. And as you lie here now, your body heavy, your mind beginning to release, you do not need to hold this thought. It holds itself. It always has. A question that asks nothing from you, except to be noticed. And once you notice it, you remember that you already knew. The question remains, quiet but present, not loud enough to pull at you, not faint enough to fade. It lingers, like a tone just beneath thought, patient, without urgency, and then something changes. Not the question itself, but the way it begins to be held. Because at some point, that same pattern was noticed by another mind. Not in a moment like this, not between waking and rest, but in a different kind of quiet, a focused one, a mind that did not let the thought drift, but followed it, carefully, one step at a time, without rushing toward an answer. It took the feeling, the same feeling you are holding now, and gave it form, not a conclusion, not a belief, a structure. And within that structure only 3 paths, not many, not endless, just 3. 3 ways reality could be arranged, and if the reasoning holds, at least one of them must be true. The first path is the quiet end. That minds like this, in worlds like this, never reach the point where they can build others, not because they lack the drive, but because something always intervenes, a limit, a collapse, a failure before completion. Growth begins, then ends. And if that is the case, then this room, this moment, is the base layer. Nothing beneath it, nothing before it. Reality exactly as it appears, no further depth. The second path is more considered. It allows the climb. It allows that worlds like this one do reach the level where they could build others. Detailed, convincing, real from the inside. But then they hold, not from failure, from choice. They carry the ability and decide not to act on it. And if that is true, then again, this remains original, foundational, not contained within another. But then, the third path, and this one does not fade. It only requires 2 things: that some worlds endure long enough, and that at least a few of them choose to build. Because once those 2 conditions are met, the rest follows on its own. One world becomes many. Those worlds if they run deep enough. Hold minds that ask the same questions you are asking now. Minds that wonder at this hour. Minds that notice the ceiling. Minds that feel the thought arrive without invitation and cannot fully let it go. Minds that build. And in building, repeat the pattern without knowing they are repeating it. Layer beneath layer. Depth beneath depth. Not announced, not visible from within. Just expanding, quietly, until the number of built worlds far exceeds the number of original ones. And when that point arrives, something in the balance changes, not dramatically, not in a way you could identify from inside, but the numbers no longer favor what once felt obvious. You have moved through enough of your life to know that what is probable and what actually arrives do not always match. That the long road, the one that did not look like the right one, sometimes turns out to be the only one that led anywhere real. And here, the reasoning arrives at the same kind of place. Not certainty, not confirmation, but a quiet tipping, away from the assumption that this is the first layer, toward the real opening, that it may not be. And within that opening, something worth holding. Because if this is not the original layer, if it was built, then your presence within it was not accidental. The conditions that placed you here, in this body, in this life, were not random arrangement. They were allowed, configured, held in place by something that determined these conditions were the ones worth running. Not comfortable conditions, necessarily. Not the easy path, but exact ones. And occasionally, the exactness becomes visible. Not in the large moments that announce themselves, in the ones that fit too perfectly to have arrived any other way. The favorite day you carried for years before you knew who you would carry it with. The one she carried too, separately, without knowing. And the world that held both of you in the wrong arrangements first, waited, and then gave you that day to make it permanent, not coincidence. A configuration completing itself, the hard years included, the long gaps included, all of it exact, all of it required for this particular thread to arrive at that particular day, running underneath everything you moved through to get here, not proven, not confirmed, but present, the way the question has always been present, quietly, without needing your agreement. And now, that idea rests near you, the way the question did, not loud, not demanding, just there. If minds like yours can exist inside built worlds, in numbers that far exceed the original, then what does that change about this one? No need to decide, not tonight. Just let it remain. A turn in the road, quiet enough to miss. The room is here, the ceiling holds, your breath continues, even unhurried. But behind all of it, there is now a layer that was not visible before. Not lit, not named, just present. As if reality has taken one quiet step back and revealed that it may not be alone. The idea has landed now, not drifting, not uncertain. It has weight, and because of that weight, you begin to notice things differently. The room around you, the air, the quiet, not as background, but as evidence. Because if this could be a built world, it would not be formless. It would not be random. It would follow rules. Every working thing does. Every process that continues, every order that holds, requires a boundary, a limit that defines what is possible and what is not. And when you begin to look at this world closely, you find that it has them. Precise ones. The first is one you already carry without knowing you carry it. Nothing here moves beyond a certain rate. No object, no current, no piece of information. No matter how much force is behind it, there is a ceiling, fixed, exact, everywhere the same. It does not vary by location. It does not change under pressure. It holds at the edge of the furthest reach of the world the way it holds in this room right now. A maximum, beyond which nothing passes. You do not feel it in ordinary life, but it is always operating. A quiet boundary, defining what this world allows. And in any working order, limits like that are not mistakes. They are definitions, built into the foundation. A boundary that keeps the whole architecture from coming apart. The second limit is harder to feel. Not a rate, a length, the floor of how far inward you can go. At a certain depth, finer than anything that can be directly measured, the concept of distance begins to lose clarity. You cannot divide further. You cannot keep going inward and find more detail waiting. There is a floor, a final point of resolution. Below it, the idea of location no longer holds in the way you understand it. And that floor is built into the world, a depth beyond which the world does not go. You know what it means to arrive at a floor, to reach the bottom of something and find there is no further down, to realize the floor was always there, long before you were looking for it. Every built thing has one, a point of final grain, just the limit itself, holding everything above it in place. And here, in the fabric of the world you move through every day, that same limit appears, a maximum rate outward, a minimum point inward, boundaries on both ends, not endless, not open in every direction, but held, contained within exact lines that do not give, and within those lines, everything that can happen, happens, including this moment, including you, including the particular arrangement of everything that placed you here, in this room, at this hour. There is one more layer. At the finest level of matter, things do not hold fixed positions. They exist in a kind of open potential, not one outcome, multiple available outcomes, held together until an interaction occurs. And then, one outcome appears. The open potential closes down to one, as if the world, at that level, only fully commits when it has to. You do not need the equations, only the feeling of it. A world that holds its options open until they are required. That operates within exact limits, not despite them, but because of them. Because without the limits, there is no world. Without the maximum rate, movement has no consistent meaning. Without the floor, location cannot hold. Without the rules, there is no moment, no room. The limits are not a cage. They are the condition for anything existing at all. And you may know something about that from the inside. There is a kind of mind that runs faster than the architecture was built for. That reaches for more names to hold, more faces to remember, more threads to follow, more to refine, more to learn, more to offer to the next person who walks in and needs to feel like someone noticed them. The engine does not have a natural idle. It does not wind down at the end of the day the way some engines do. It keeps going, reaching, connecting things that most minds would let go of, and the limits that come with that, the edges where the reach exceeds what can be held cleanly, the moments where everything arrives at once and the only option is to smile and keep moving. Those are not failures of the arrangement. They are the exact conditions required to produce someone who reaches this far, who refines this carefully, who notices this much, who is still awake at this hour, still asking the question, because the engine does not stop just because the day is over. The limit and the drive are the same thing. The ceiling that keeps the world intact and the ceiling that keeps you reaching are built from the same logic. Not to constrain, to make the running possible at all. And as you rest here now, your body heavy, the quiet around you complete, you can let that observation hold, not as a claim, not as a demand, just as what it is. A world that runs on exact rules, that holds every time, without exception. A world that behaves like it was designed to continue. And once you feel that, even faintly, the room around you carries a different kind of weight, not less real, more deliberate than it first appeared. The world has already begun to look different, not because anything has changed, but because you are looking at it differently now. And at this level, the question is no longer about the edges of reality, the maximum rate, the final floor. It moves to the center, to how anything appears at all. At very fine levels of matter, things do not behave the way they look from here. Not like the objects you can hold, not like anything that occupies one place and holds there without question. At that depth, matter does not keep a fixed position. It exists in a kind of open range. Not one location, but many. Not one outcome, but a field of available outcomes, held together, unresolved. It does not choose a path. It does not land. It remains open. And that is difficult to hold because it does not match what you can directly observe. Here, things appear defined. A cup on a table, a wall where it was built, your hand where you placed it. Clear, reliable, each thing in one location. But beneath all of that, those clear conditions are not always confirmed. They remain available, held in potential, until something interacts with them. To understand that interaction, there is a process that has been carried out many times, carefully, with the exact same result every time. Imagine a device that releases tiny pieces of matter one at a time. Ahead of them, a barrier. In that barrier, two narrow openings, two paths forward. Beyond the barrier, a flat area where each piece finally arrives. If you let them through without watching, you might expect a direct outcome. Each piece travels one path or the other, leaves a mark. Two clusters form. But that is not what appears. What forms instead is a pattern, not two marks, not two areas. A repeating arrangement of bands, light, dark, light, dark. A pattern that belongs to waves, not to individual pieces of matter. As if each piece, rather than taking one path, took both, moved through the whole available range, interfered with itself, and arrived not as a point, but as a field of probability. That alone would be enough. But then you watch. You place a detector at the barrier. You observe which path each piece takes, and the pattern changes, the bands fade, the wave arrangement collapses. Two marks, two areas, one path per piece. The observation does not reveal which path was taken. It determines it. Without observation, the full range holds open. With observation, one outcome forms. That has been tested many times, refined, held under every available condition, and it holds. You do not need the mathematics, only the feeling of what it points toward. A world that does not fully commit until it is observed. That holds available outcomes open until the moment requires one. And when you place that beside the idea of a built world, something aligns. In many built things, only what is needed is fully formed. Only what is observed is brought into complete definition. The rest remains potential, waiting to be called forward. You may have felt something like this yourself. There are periods in a life when the version of you that exists is not yet the final one, when you are still open, unresolved, holding multiple possible paths without having committed to one. And then something observes you, not gently. Loss observes you. The sudden absence of everyone at once, the people who no longer needed what you had been offering, the gravity that turned out not to be love, the closest one going quietly after the rest had already gone, all at once, without warning, in the way that only arrives when the world has decided it is time to collapse the range. And in that observation, the pattern changed. Not several outcomes held open. One. A single truth forming from everything that had been unresolved. That control is not connection. That the ones who love you cannot be the ones you hold in place. That love which requires dominance is not love at all. That you could be loved without being in charge of it. That did not arrive as a lesson offered kindly. It arrived as loss, as the particular clarity that only forms when the observation is complete and there is nowhere left to stand, except inside what is actually true. And from that resolution, everything that followed became possible. The opening of doors, the earning of trust, the ability to find someone and love her without needing to contain her. The world does not fully define itself until it is observed. Neither did you. And what you became when the observation was complete could not have been reached any other way. Today is a good day, and tomorrow, in ways not yet visible from here, will be better. Not because the world guarantees forward motion, but because you are already the person the observation produced. And a world that holds potential open until the moment arrives is a world that has not finished what it is building in you. Once that idea arrives, it does not easily leave. You are deeper in now, not at the edge of the idea anymore, inside it. And from here, the question changes form. It is no longer only about how the world behaves, about limits and resolution, about what observation does to potential. It moves to the foundation itself, to the values that hold everything in place. Because for a world like this to exist, certain conditions must be exact, not approximate, not within a general range. Exact. And when you begin to look at what those values are, something becomes difficult to move past. They are narrow, remarkably narrow, not wide bands of acceptable variation, but tight conditions, each one within a range that allows the whole architecture to hold. Take the force that draws matter together, the one that forms the large bodies in the night, that gathers clouds of gas into burning points of light, that holds worlds in orbit around them. If that force were even fractionally greater than it is, matter would pull together too fast. Formations would arise and collapse before anything complex could develop. If it were fractionally weaker, matter would drift. Nothing would gather. No light, no warmth, no ground that could hold. And yet, that force rests at exactly the value that allows both to happen. Gathering and duration, formation and order, balanced at the narrow point between the two where everything becomes possible. And that force is not alone. There are others, values that govern how particles bind, how energy moves, how the interaction between fundamental things produces the conditions for everything that follows. Each one narrow, each one exact, each one holding the whole arrangement in place. If any one of them were different, just fractionally from what it currently holds, the result would not be a different kind of world. It would be nothing at all. No atoms, no light, no moment, no room, no you. And that is where it deepens. Because when every value that defines a world is found within the narrow band that makes life possible, a quiet question follows. Why these particular values? One possibility is chance. That, out of all possible arrangements, this one happened to work. But there is another way to hold it. That these values were defined, held, maintained within exact limits so that the whole architecture could follow. Parameters, configured, running without variation across every moment since the first one. And when you allow that possibility, it only adds a layer to what is already here. Because in any built thing, values like these are locked in, tested against the requirement, held until the output matches the intention. And here, in the world you move through, that same quality appears. A world that looks as if it was configured to produce exactly this, including the difficult parts. That is the piece that often goes unspoken. Exact conditions are not only the easy ones, they are all of them. There is a kind of output that cannot be produced by a single clean run. It requires iteration, requires entering the wrong arrangement fully, learning what it costs and carrying that learning forward. Requires accepting things you should not have accepted, until the acceptance itself taught you what you would no longer allow. Requires failing at the version of yourself that was not yet ready, so that the version who was ready could eventually exist. You were not always the person who could earn what you have. You had to become him. Through every relationship that did not hold, through every pattern repeated until understood, through the slow accumulation of knowing, not what you wanted, but what you were willing to become in order to deserve it. Each iteration narrowing the range. Each failure state a lesson that could not have arrived any other way. The person who emerged from that process, the one who could finally recognize her, earn her, love her the way she deserves to be loved, could only have been produced by those exact conditions, not a shortcut, not a cleaner path. Those ones, every wrong arrangement required, every difficult year part of the build. The output is not the result of the good parts alone. The output is the result of all of it. And the output is here, in this body, in this room, oriented forward. Today is a good day, and tomorrow, built on every exact condition that came before it, will be better. Not as comfort, as what follows naturally from a life running within exact limits all along. And as you rest here now, your body heavy, the room holding its quiet around you, you can let that land, not as resolution, but as recognition, that the balance required for this world to exist at all is the same kind of balance that your life has been running on. Exact conditions, narrow range, everything within it required. A balance that did not have to be this way, and yet it is. Exactly as it needed to be. And once that lands, the question that began all of this carries a weight it did not have before. Long before the language of physics, long before equations and measurement, this question had already begun to form, not in labs, not in data, but in quiet thought, in minds that held the same feeling you are holding now, the same uncertainty, the same awareness that something might not be what it appears to be. And they asked, in their own way, what is real? One of the earliest to hold that question clearly told a story. Imagine a group of people who have lived their entire lives inside a cave, facing a wall, unable to turn. Behind them, a fire. Between the fire and the people, objects moving, casting outlines on the wall ahead. That is all they have ever known. Outlines, motion, the appearance of things. To them, those outlines are reality. No reason to doubt it, no other frame to hold against it. But then one of them is freed. He turns, finds the fire, finds the objects, finds that what he believed to be real was only a projection, a layer, not the thing itself. And when he returns to tell the others, they do not follow, because their experience still feels real. And that is the point. Not that their world was false, but that it was limited, a layer, not the full depth. That idea echoes forward. Centuries later, another mind approached the same question from a different direction. He did not tell a story. He turned inward. He asked a quieter question. Not whether the world was false, but whether there was any way to confirm it was not. Every test you could run arrives through the same channel. Every piece of evidence is itself an experience. There is no position outside of it, no place to verify from that is not already inside the thing being verified. Certainty becomes fragile, not gone, but without a flaw that cannot itself be questioned. That idea does not depend on technology. It only requires one thing, that your experience could be generated. And then a different question arrived, not about deception, but about choice. What if you knew? What if the offer was open and you could enter a perfect version of your life? Every moment you have valued, every connection that mattered, every hour that felt like exactly where you were meant to be, all of it recreated, running without interruption, indistinguishable from what you actually lived. Would you enter it? Most people pause. And then, most people say no. Not because the life inside would be worse, not because the feeling would be less convincing, but because something resists, something that does not reason its way to the answer. It simply knows that a connection is not the same thing as a perfect copy of a connection. That love which costs something is not interchangeable with love that costs nothing. That the moments which mattered most mattered precisely because they were real, because the other person was truly there, because what happened between you could not have been produced by any arrangement that did not involve actual risk. There are moments in a life when you understand what another person needs more clearly than you understand your own. When you can see what the honest thing is before you can bring yourself to do it. When you know that what the situation calls for and what you want the situation to be are not the same thing. And in that moment, the real act is not to hold on. It is to open the door, to say what you actually see, to give them what they need even when it costs you everything you wanted to keep. That act is the one no perfect machine would ever generate, because it has no model for choosing against yourself out of genuine care, no category for the particular clarity of wanting someone's freedom more than you want their presence. That cannot be recreated, it can only be lived, and the part of you that would say no to the machine already knows this. It does not need to be argued into the answer. It knows that what made certain moments real was not the feeling alone. It was everything the feeling was built on, the actual ground, the actual cost, the actual choice made when no one required you to make it. A perfect version, however convincing, would be missing exactly that. the part that cannot be copied because it was never a feature. It was what made it true. And when you hold all of this together, the cave, the unverifiable channel, the machine that offers everything and still cannot offer this, a pattern holds. That what is real resists replacement, not loudly, not with argument, with the quiet certainty of something that knows its own weight. And as you lie here now, between waking and rest, you can feel that. You are not alone in this question. Others have carried it across a long time, turned it over, never fully resolved it, only deepened it. And the part of you that already knew the machine was never going to be enough, did not arrive at that tonight. It has always known. From the moment it understood what it meant to love something honestly and prove it by letting go. At some point, an idea like this moves, not loudly, not with announcement. It drifts from the territory of philosophy toward the edge of what can actually be tested, not because it arrived with proof, but because it refused to fade. And when a question holds long enough, someone eventually asks the harder version. Can any of this be measured? A few have moved into that territory, not in agreement, not with answers, but willing to take the question further than most would. One approached it through probability alone. If built worlds become more detailed over time, more capable of holding minds that cannot tell the difference, their number would grow, not gradually, at a rate that outpaces the original. And if that is true, the number of minds inside built worlds would far exceed the number in any original layer. From that, a quiet conclusion follows. That the likelihood of being in the original layer becomes very narrow, not impossible, just unlikely. Another voice holds the idea differently, not as a conclusion, but as a genuine opening, placing it at the edge of what is credible, not fringe, not confirmed, worthy of honest examination. And that matters, because when an idea reaches that point, it becomes available to careful investigation. Two researchers asked a different kind of question, not about probability, about evidence. If reality were running on an underlying order, would it leave traces? They looked at high-energy particles moving across the furthest distances, asked whether their behavior would reveal a grid beneath the world, patterns that might show how the architecture beneath reality is actually arranged. The work does not confirm anything, but it demonstrates something important, that the question can be tested, examined rather than only imagined. And then there is something quieter. A mathematician working in the equations that attempt to describe the fundamental behavior of everything found a pattern he did not expect. Not a prediction, not a signal. A structure embedded in the math itself, one that closely resembles a particular kind of code. The kind built into digital architecture not to add information, but to protect it, to detect when something has gone wrong, to correct the error before it compounds, to keep the whole arrangement running even when parts of it degrade, found inside the equations that describe the foundation of reality. That is worth holding for more than a moment, because that kind of code does not appear by accident. It is placed with a function, not to generate, not to display, to preserve, to maintain the integrity of a running arrangement against everything that would erode it, against pressure, against the accumulation of everything that works against continuation. You may know something about that from the inside. There are long periods in a life when everything external is under pressure, when the ground does not hold, when nothing appears to be building toward anything, and yet something continues to run. Not because you decided it would, not because willpower was holding it in place, but because it was underneath, a function that did not require your awareness to keep operating. The ability to be kind, even when the day had taken everything it could take, even when you were carrying more than anyone around you could see, even when the version of you that was managing had very little left to give. The ability to make people laugh, to find what would land for the person in front of you, to be genuinely present for them in a way that had nothing to do with how things were going underneath. Everyone deserves a laugh, even when you are the one who needs it most. No one required that. No external condition demanded it. It ran because it was built into something that did not need permission to continue, not effort, not performance. A function, running quietly, protecting something essential while everything else was under repair. That is exactly the pattern the equations contain. Preservation logic, embedded in the foundation, not maintained from outside, built in. And finding that arrangement in the math that describes how reality holds together raises a question worth holding. What if continuation is not incidental? What if the foundation of this world contains its own instruction to keep running? Not proven, not confirmed, but the pattern is there, in the equations, in the behavior of the world at its finest level, in the part of you that kept going when nothing external required it to. The same arrangement, different expressions, and as you lie here now, between waking and rest, you can feel that. This is no longer only imagination. It is being examined, turned over carefully, by minds working at the actual edge of what can be known. That does not make it true, but it makes it something other than a feeling. It has weight now. And once an idea reaches that point, it does not easily leave. There are moments, quiet ones, easy to move past, where something feels just slightly off. Not wrong, not broken, just not quite aligned. A detail that does not land the way it should. A feeling that arrives without a clear origin. You notice it, and then it goes. But it leaves something behind. Not a thought exactly, more like a trace. A quiet mark that something did not fully match. You have felt it before, at least once. A moment where the present feels familiar in a way that has no clear explanation. Not close to something you remember, not almost. Exact, like entering a moment that has already been lived. The arrangement of the room, the quality of the light, the particular feeling of that exact breath. All of it lining up with something that has no clear origin. And then it is gone. You move forward. But part of you does not fully accept it as nothing. There are explanations, memory crossing itself, timing misaligned, familiar patterns arriving from unexpected directions. Those may be right, but the feeling itself does not behave like an error. It feels placed. Another kind of moment is quieter. A detail you remember with certainty does not match what is recorded. A word, a name, a small, fixed thing that feels different when you return to it. You hesitate, not long, just enough to notice the gap, and when others carry the same memory, when the difference is not only yours, it lingers a little longer, not enough to convince, but enough to hold open a question between what is recorded and what feels true. And then there are moments that do not have names at all, patterns that repeat too cleanly, events that arrive with a precision that feels unlikely, not impossible, but noticeable. A thread that fits together just a little too well to move past without pausing. The mind builds meaning, It connects things across time that may not belong together. That is what it does. And most of the time, that is enough. But then there is another kind of experience. Rarer, harder to move past. The feeling that the world has been keeping track of you, not watching in the way that feels intrusive. Attending. The way certain things arrive at the exact moment they are needed. The way a door opens just when you have become ready to walk through it. The way the right conditions do not force themselves into place. They wait. They hold the available range open until everything required has moved into position. You may have known this feeling without knowing what to call it. Two people existing in the same place for years. Both held in arrangements that were not the right ones. Both aware of each other in the way you are aware of something that is not yet yours to act on. And the world does not intervene. It does not correct the arrangement. It holds the potential open for years. Across the ordinary rhythm of work and movement and all the decisions that do not feel important while you are making them. And then, both of you leave, separately, without planning it together. A quiet gap. Two people who were always in proximity, no longer in the same place. And then the world places you next to each other again. Not the same location, a new one, new walls, and this time, no distance at all. Right next to each other. And the laughter arrives. The kind that makes you feel more like yourself than you have in years. The kind where someone finds you in a way that no one had found you before. Not just receiving the humor, reflecting it. Making you feel like the version of yourself you had always suspected was there, but rarely had the room to be. The kind that confirms something you did not know you had been waiting to hear. That is not coincidence. That is the thread completing. The world held that potential open across years, and two buildings, and every wrong arrangement in between. Every ordinary day that did not look like it was building toward anything. Every moment of proximity that was not yet time. All of it exact. All of it required. For both of you to arrive at the same moment, finally ready. Something was keeping track. Not of everything. Of this particular thread. Quietly. Over years. Without announcing itself. Attending to it. Holding the conditions, waiting without urgency for the arrangement to become right. And as you lie here now, between waking and rest, you can feel that. The moments that did not fully resolve. The patterns that fit too cleanly. The feeling of being attended to rather than only observed. These are not errors. They are the record. The trace of a thread the world has been following longer than you were aware of it. Today is a good day, and tomorrow will be better. Not because the question is resolved, not because the glitches have been explained, but because you are the one the world arranged all of that to find, and you are here. Once you begin to notice these moments, even lightly, they have a way of holding, not loudly, just enough to remain. At this point, the question has changed. It is no longer only about what this world is. It is about what it would mean if it isn't what it appears to be. Not held at a distance, not as an abstract possibility, but as something that reaches into everything you are inside of. Because if this is a built world, then there is something beyond it. Not close, not something you can point to, but there, outside the layer you move through, holding it from a place you cannot access from within. And that alone, quietly, changes things, because it means what you see is not the final depth, just one part of something larger, one layer in an arrangement that does not end here. And when you hold that, another thought forms. If there is something beyond this, then whatever exists there holds the conditions of it. Just structurally, the way any built thing is held by what built it. The rules of this world were defined from outside it, and they are maintained from outside it, which means this arrangement could be ended. Not as something that will happen, not as a threat, just as something that is true about any running thing, that it runs because something allows it to run. Most people build distance from that idea across a lifetime. Rituals, forward motion, the daily architecture that makes the outer boundary something that can be carried without being examined too directly. And through enough living, the fact of ending can lose most of its charge. It becomes the outer boundary, the final limit of the arrangement, present, accepted, no longer carrying the weight it once did. To have moved through enough that the ending itself has become simply a fact, something that will arrive in its own time without requiring your fear in the meantime. But then there is something else, something the mind moves toward when the ending itself no longer holds its power. Not your own ending, someone else's. The one the world arranged years of conditions to place beside you. The one who found you funny in a way no one ever had. The one who made you feel like the version of yourself you had always suspected was there. That is where the weight lives now. Not in the off switch itself, but in the order of it. In the possibility that the arrangement could end in the wrong sequence, that she could go before you. And that thought carries everything the other one no longer does. Because you have arrived at a place where your own ending holds no fear, and the ending of one other person holds all of it. Every fear that dissolved across a lifetime has not disappeared. It relocated into love, into the particular love that arrived through years of proximity and waiting, through laughter, through being found by someone who reflected back the version of you that had always been there. Into a love that runs beneath everything the way preservation logic runs beneath the equations. Not because it was designed to, not because anything required it, because it arrived, and because it is real. That kind of love does not generate fear because something is wrong. It generates fear because the love is real, because it cost something to arrive at, because losing it would be the only loss that could not be reconfigured into something bearable. Infinity, till nothing persists, that is the edge of what love can mean. Not metaphor, not sentiment. A genuine desire for continuation that has nothing to do with self-preservation. That is entirely about someone else. That is the proof, the data point the whole arrangement was built to produce. That something inside a built world could love another thing beyond its own continuation, without being designed to, without being required to, without any rule that would generate that outcome. It simply arrived, and it is the one thing no arrangement can manufacture on demand. It can only be held, and you hold it. Which means the choice that exists inside every condition you did not design is the most important feature of the entire arrangement. Not the physics, not the calibration, not the preservation logic running quietly underneath everything. This, the fact that you are here, inside exact conditions, choosing to love something all the way to the outer boundary and past it if you could. That is the reason a world like this is worth running. And as you lie here now, between waking and rest, you can let all of it hold, the boundary that no longer frightens you, the love that does, the choice that exists inside every condition you were given without asking. Today is a good day, and tomorrow will be better. Not because the order is guaranteed, not because the arrangement is promised to hold, but because you are inside it now, aware of it, choosing it. And the world arranged everything it could to make sure you had this. What it means to be here at all is not a question that requires an answer. It is already being lived, right now, in this room, in this exact moment of knowing what you would lose and loving it all the way through anyway. Now, the question can rest. Not because it was answered, not because you found the final layer or confirmed what this world is or resolved what lies beyond it, but because you have carried it far enough that you know its weight. And carrying something long enough is its own kind of understanding. You began here, in this room, on this bed, with the ceiling above you and the quiet around you and the faint hum beyond the walls that was always there before you thought to listen for it. And you are still here. Nothing has changed. And yet the room holds something now that it did not hold when you arrived. Not information, not proof. Depth. The sense that what appears to be one layer may be many. That what appears to be ordinary may be exactly configured. That what appears to be random has been running on exact conditions for longer than you have been aware of them. And underneath all of that, the thing that makes it worth holding. Not the physics, not the calibration, not the structure beneath the structure. The love that arrived through years of exact conditions, the one who found you, the one the world arranged everything to place beside you. That is what this moment is made of. And that is enough to rest inside. You do not need to hold any of it now. It holds itself. It always has. Your attention can soften. Let the edges of thought lose their definition. Let the question drift back toward wherever it waits. Not gone, not resolved, just no longer requiring your hands around it. Like a sound that has moved far enough away that you are no longer tracking it, only aware it is there, somewhere, continuing without you. Your breath continues. It has been continuing all along, each inhale arriving without instruction, each exhale leaving the same way. The body knows what to do. It has always known. And now, it begins to do it. The weight arrives, not suddenly, not as something imposed from outside. Gradually, peacefully, the way a thing that has been held upright all day finally recognizes that the ground was always there, that it did not need to be held upright, that the holding was the only effort, and the effort is no longer required, not falling, allowing. The flesh finding the bed accepting the flesh. This is what it has always been for. Each part of you becoming slightly less distinct from what holds it. The boundary between body and cover growing quieter, not gone, just less insistent, less necessary. Like something that has been running on the continuous effort of maintaining itself, finally releasing that effort. Piece by piece, without announcement, without drama. The way a current powers down when the work is finished, not off, resting. You have been running all day, processing, deciding, moving through everything the world required. And now, that running is done. The processing releases, one thing at a time. The plans, the replays, the half-completed thoughts that were waiting at the edge of your attention. They let go first, quietly, without being told. And then the awareness that was holding all of them begins to follow. Heavier, slower. Like a machine that has completed its function and does not need to announce the completion. It simply becomes still, not gone. Present in a different way, a quieter way. The way things are present when they are no longer being used. This is what the body does when you finally allow it. It lays down, sideways, on the thing, and it lets itself be held. Not because it decided to, because it was always going to. Because rest is not something you achieve. It is something that arrives when you stop being in the way of it. And you have stopped. The question remains, somewhere at the edge, patient. The way it has always been patient, asking nothing of you tonight. Today was a good day, and tomorrow will be better. Not as a thought requiring effort, as something already true in the way the ceiling is already there above you in the dark, already held, already waiting, requiring nothing from you but to be present when it arrives. And you will be. The room is the same. The quiet is the same. The breath continues, and you are heavier now. In the good way. The way that means the weight has been returned to what was always willing to hold it. The bed, the dark, the quiet. The world that was running before you arrived in it and will continue after you wake. And somewhere in the arrangement that holds all of this together, something has been attending to this particular thread, across years, across every wrong arrangement that had to be moved through first, across every exact condition required to bring you here, to this room, to this night, to this particular weight settling into this particular bed. It knows you are here. It has always known, and it is content to let you rest. The question will be there in the morning. It always is. But tonight, it holds itself. And you can do what the body has been waiting all day to do. Today was a good day, and tomorrow will be better. Sweet dreams. The night is long, but your mind is infinite. Until the next paradox, good night.